Fundamentally, I don't think we failed to get to Mars because of lack of technology or lack of funding. I think the reason is a much more simple and humble one, and that is we haven't found a watch that looks good in the Martian environment. Our friends at Omega, however, think they've got us covered with their latest release, the X-33 Marstimer. The Speedmaster X-33 Marstimer is the latest release in a slightly more niche line from Omega, following on from former models like the Skywalker and the Speedmaster. This time around, Omega has seen fit to equip us for our trip to Mars with a 45mm chronograph in titanium with a titanium bracelet. There's also a NATO strap included, which is handy when you need to switch from one bracelet to the next, depending on the environment on Mars that you will be moving around in. The watch comes with a dual analog digital display. The digital display comes through in a Martian green tone. The actual dial is a dark black, and you have it surrounded with a bezel which comes in a color of orange, earthy orange in aluminium, with the formal color being called hematite, which is, according to Omega, supposed to give us reminders of our red planet neighbor and its very characteristic colors. I think that works very well, and I think they pretty much hit it spot on. Unlike most Omega models that come with a mechanical movement, this watch comes with a quartz movement, and that's because of the complications, which include the ability to tell time and time zones on Mars, which are absolutely essential for your Mars mission. Omega have gone for a modern, slightly futuristic aesthetic. This is not a understated watch. Granted, it's not all gold. It's not full of ceramic, it hasn't been studded with diamonds, but this is not an under-the-radar versatility type watch like the Moon watch is. It's not a sci-fi watch though when comparing to the watch Matt Damon wore in the movie The Martian. He wore the Hamilton khaki navy below zero, which was in all black, which gave a decidedly more sci-fi and eye-catching aesthetic compared to the relatively more subdued Marstimer. I kind of get the feeling that the watch Matt Damon wore was designed with a hostile invasion in mind, whereas the Omega Marstimer was designed for a more diplomatic approach to colonizing and living on Mars. And that's the thing about this watch. Omega has clearly put a lot of thought into the styling of this watch, despite the fact that it falls in the category of instruments on their website. This is not an Uhrwerk or an MBF and Astronomia, which to me sort of illustrates the paradox of the X-33 Marstimer. Functionally, this watch has what it needs to function as a tool watch on Mars or in the NASA Control Center back on Earth. Omega is, after all, in the business of selling watches that people are going to wear rather than producing purely functional timekeeping equipment, which to me means that this watch has to be evaluated primarily on its aesthetic merits, not on its functional merits. Contrasting this with the Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch, it becomes apparent that the aesthetics are not nearly as versatile as the better known Moonwatch. First of all, the 45mm size, which by 2022 standards is on the big side, is going to be a problem for a lot of prospective buyers. The dimensions and case design allow it to wear smaller than you would think, but it's still a large watch. This is not an under-the-cuff watch unless your style is oversized, loose-fitting shirts. At 45mm, this watch is going to work well for people with bigger arms. Short-sleeve t-shirts and the hematite bezel clearly implores you to get a tan. Slapping on the included NATO will raise the watch a little bit further off the wrist and could potentially make it feel a little bit lopsided and make it look a little bit lopsided. Aesthetically, I think this watch is going to run into a couple of problems. Realistically, none of us are going to be traveling to Mars with this watch. The NASA engineers may feel a personal connection to this watch and make it feel special to them, but for the rest of us, unless it eventually becomes the pre-Mars watch, it won't carry quite the same appeal except for the most ardent and fervent collectors. What you're left with is a fairly large quartz watch with an orange bezel that limits the versatility of the watch. It's hard to style this watch as a classy watch with a black or brown alligator strap. Throwing on a NATO is doable as long as you stick to muted earthy tones, much like the orange accented NATO that's included with the watch. Beach colors, primary colors, are going to clash, and not in a good way, with the earth-toned hematite and dark dial. Incidentally, with a 30-meter water resistant, this is a watch that I borderline wouldn't take anywhere near water, which is unfortunate because I actually think it has an aesthetic that would work in that environment, where this watch with the right NATO, the right bracelet, or the right rubber strap actually would fit quite well in. This is a reasonably attractive, albeit by today's standards, oversized watch with a bezel dial combo that isn't going to cut it as a versatile, multi-occasion daily wearer kind of watch. Yes, you can wear whatever you want, wherever you want, but the aesthetic proposition is akin to wearing orange chinos or orange khakis. It's doable, and if that's your style, super. But for most of us, it's going to have a limited use case. This makes me consider what alternatives potential buyers of this watch should have in mind before pulling the trigger. What immediately comes to mind to me is the Omega Planet Ocean series. This is a series which in many ways may appeal to the broader buying segment for a number of reasons. First of all, it's a little bit smaller, not by much. Granted, it's a little bit higher, but the overall lug-to-lug and case dimensions make for a slightly smaller watch. Not by much, though. It is, however, a watch that comes in a huge number of variations, from all black dial and bezel to orange to blue to full gold case to ceramic. There are simply so many more variations to choose from, and depending on your own personal aesthetic choices, there is an option in the Planet Ocean range for you. Beach guy, surfer dude, professional sailor, always in a wetsuit or board suits, get this one. If you're a larger gentleman in a suit and tie kind of business and you don't want the sea dweller, get the Planet Ocean. If you're an outdoorsy gentleman with a Land Rover Discovery, khaki chinos and barber coat, the Planet Ocean will work well for you as well. If you want a quartz watch with a ton of functionality that you'll likely never use, there is only one brand you should be considering, and that's Casio and the G-Shock line. Look at this all steel Casio, analog and digital display, steel case, price 1/6 of the Omega. Or, to take it even further, get this MTG, which largely gives you the same aesthetic, and then get another watch to alternate between. You'll have the giant big boy MTG, which in fairness is a fair sight bigger than the X-33, and another watch in a more controlled size. The X-33 attempts at straddling a middle ground between building a compelling story with the Mars connection, speaking to the most fervent collectors and NASA scientists on the one hand, and choosing a reasonably muted aesthetic on the other hand, in the hopes of appealing to a broader audience. And I can't help but think it's a little bit of not achieving either. This is a pretty watch, I like it, but for the regular Joe who is not part of the watch fam universe, this is a resounding meh. Those were my thoughts about the Omega Speedmaster X-33 Marstimer. Hope to see you back again another time.